Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Lux mid lane and support. A lot of what the runes offer Lux is damage amplification or a bit of utility. And the mid lane, your most viable keystone is going to be Arcane Comment. You do have the options of running Glacier Augment though. I think Summoner Spellbook, you could run it, but it's you basically become the gimped version of like Twisted Fate or Orianna at that point. Glacial Augment offers you a bit more utility, especially if you're playing into dive comps, and I think Lux can pull it off, even though you really don't see it that often. But with Arcane Comment, it gives you more damage on your abilities and puts you in the sorcery tree. With Arcane Comment, damaging a champion with an ability hurls a comment at their location, and if Arcane Comment's on cooldown, then hitting an ability lowers its cooldown. With Lux, since her abilities are on such a low or such a high cooldown, then you don't really build this up compared to other champions. But if you lead with where you lead with E and Q, then maybe in an extended fight, then you could. But with Arcane Comment, the main purpose of it is to add to your poke in lane and then build that up against the opponent, as the Comet's basically guaranteed to land if you're landing your Q or your E, as the E slows and the Q roots. With Arcane Comment 2, the adaptive damage scales based off your level, and then off your, for Lux, your bonus ability power. And with that, that puts you at just a lot more damage come level 9 or so, and it just really makes it hard for if you survive from levels like 1 to 7 as Lux, then you really start taking over levels like 7 to about 13, especially if the laning phase like persists. And even if the game like breaks out into an ARAM, you're still getting a good amount of value, as you're simply having more damage whenever you're landing your E or your Q. It's also going to add to your total burst on a target. So for the secondary runes, since you're in the sorcery tree, your good options are Mana Flow Band or Nullifying Orb. If you're playing into an AP matchup that like can burst you, so champions like Vigar, Syndra, or if you're playing against like a Karthus jungle or Echo jungle, like really consider running Nullifying Orb. Missing out on the mana for Mana Flow, it doesn't feel good, but the mana from this is kind of a luxury. With Nullifying Orb, whenever you take magic damage that would reduce you below 30% health, you gain a shield that absorbs 40 to 120 magic damage based on your level, and then lasts for 4 seconds, and it's only on a 1 minute cooldown, so effectively every single time you'd be bursted down, then you're going to have this extra shield effectively giving you more HP. And where Lux already has a shield in her kit, it makes it really obnoxious if those champions are trying to like focus you down and then they just can't. It also helps as a buffer, as you're throwing out the first part of your shield when they catch you out, and then Nullifying Orb could help keep you alive as the second part of the shield's coming back, which is the bigger part. So in those matchups, do consider running Nullifying Orb, but in most matchups you're going to be looking to run Mana Flow Ban. With Mana Flow Ban, whenever you hit an enemy champion with an ability, you permanently increase your maximum mana by 25 up to 250, which is a mana crystal for free, which is it's pretty good, especially with how Lux plays out, where you're constantly spamming your spells come mid to late game, and that's really your whole purpose. Having that extra mana just feels nice. After you reach the 250 mana gained, you restore 1% of your missing mana every 5 seconds. So again, just helps you with spamming your abilities off cooldown. And the third row, you have good options in Transcendence or Absolute Focus. I think Transcendence is going to be giving you better value, especially if you're playing Lux in the mid lane. The mid lane gets the most levels as fast as possible, so you're going to be getting to level 10 before every other champion in the game. With Transcendence, you gain 10% cooldown reduction once you reach level 10, and excess cooldown reduction is converted into ability power. So that opens up different build paths, but is mostly just for the 10% cooldown reduction. Come mid game, if you have Ludens completed with this, you're going to be sitting on 30, and then if you have blue buff, you're going to have 40. So it's really a perfect combination with how you want to be playing mid lane out. And to trade all of that off for Absolute Focus doesn't seem too good for me, as with Absolute Focus, while you're above 70% HP, you gain bonus ability power based on your level. You would have this levels 1 to 9 over Transcendence versus not, but after you would get the 10% cooldown reduction from Transcendence, landing or having another ability up faster is always going to give you more damage than the extra ability power offered from Absolute Focus. So I just don't see it being worth, especially where you're just missing out on like the 40% CDR while you have blue buff. It just feels worse, and the trade-off's just really not there in my eyes. For the fourth rune, I think you should go with Scorch. Even though Gathering Storm's really good, Lux's build is relatively cheap, and to get it is pretty consistent. So to get the extra ability power from Gathering Storm does help. but in solo queue it loses a lot of value. And for Lux too, Scorch is pretty useful even past like level 10 or so. With Scorch, your next damaging ability that hits a champion sets him on fire, dealing bonus magic damage based on your level, and is on a 10-second cooldown. So this adds to your overall burst if you're one-shotting someone, and it adds to your poke if you're just throwing out the E. So the damage that it builds up in combination with Arcane Comment is going to help you at all stages of the game. Levels 1 to 4, it helps you put the enemy at a lower amount of HP to either give you safety or to get lane control. Levels like 7 to about 11, it's just giving you more damage to build up in a lane trade to either gain control again of the lane or just kill a target outright. In team fights, you're going to be proccing on multiple champions and then just overall having more damage. And with that, if you're damaging the champions more, then you are just generally being more useful. For the secondary rune options, you could go a lot of different things. You could go Inspiration with like Free Boots Futures Market. This would give you Lost Chapter faster and then also accelerate your build into Luden's Sorkman Boots. You could also go Minion Dematerializer, as if you dematerialize the caster minions 3 times, you one-shot them with the E at most stages of the game. You could also go Perfect Timing if you're into a assassin matchup against champions like Kiana, Nocturne, Zed, etc., Talon. It helps you negate their all-in. And then you could also go Domination second with something like Taste of Blood Ultimate Hunter. This would help you in control mage matchups, so against champions like Syndra, Orianna, etc. As with Taste of Blood, you offset a lot of the damage that they're dealing to you, and with Ultimate Hunter, you have more ults to clear the wave or just use on the enemy. Ultimate Hunter is not that useful on Lux though, as your ult is it's on a really short cooldown, especially if you're killing targets with it. So having it up more often isn't really that useful or needed. You can also run Cheap Shot. Cheap Shot is okay, but other champions do use it better. You do simply get more damage with Cheap Shot than you otherwise would be on your poke. But if you're really looking to maximize your damage with Lux, I think that you should go with Coup de Grace plus Presence of Mind. Presence of Mind, takedowns restore 20% of your maximum mana and permanently increase it by 100 up to 500. And then with Coup de Grace, you deal 8% more damage to champions who are below 40% HP. So Coup de Grace is going to help you just one-shot targets. And then Presence of Mind is going to give you more mana to play with. And it's also going to give you mana regeneration on a kill or assist, which can be so important in a team fight, as it's very easy for Lux to spam all of her spells on cooldown and in an extended fight. So I think this is your best bet for secondary runes, as it does like everything that Lux mid wants to do. The other secondary runes don't really achieve like as much based on like how Lux wants to play things out in the mid lane. So for the shards, it's going to be Adapt to Force, and then depending on your matchup, you want to switch the resistances, obviously. So if you're playing into an AD matchup, Zed, Lucian, Kiana, etc., you want the armor. And then if you're playing into an AP matchup, champions like Syndra, Orianna, etc., then you want the magic resist, obviously. You could go the cooldown reduction shard if you wanted to, but it does delay your it just lessens your poke and kind of isn't really that useful, as you're already going to get to that 40% CTR at a pretty reasonable time when you have blue buff. So this is probably your best bet for mid lane Lux runes. The reason I would prefer this, because like all of this gives you a good amount of damage, and it really synergizes with how Lux wants to play things out. Arcane Comment plus Scorch, giving you better poke. Monoflow Band plus Transcendence, plus Presence of Mind, giving you a lot of scaling, and then giving you just more abilities to cast, and then Coup de Grace giving you amplified damage on targets who are low. So on your one shot, that's giving you more damage, and then on the second rotation of your Q and E, that's giving you more damage. It's also giving you more damage on your passive in those cases too. So I think those are really useful for Lux. Other damage runes that you could run would be like kind of off theme, and then also just not as useful. So let's say you ran something like this. Dark Harvest like does give you a little bit more damage whenever you're damaging a target that's low, but you do have to build up Dark Harvest's damage, and to do that in the laning phase, like you just have to land more rotations of your abilities against the enemies, and then you're getting less value for doing so. And if you don't kill them or get them low enough to proc Dark Harvest, then you don't build up Dark Harvest throughout the early game. And then you really start like lacking in utility as you just miss out on the damage per level with Arcane Comment, and then also the damage from Scorch, and then the cooldown reduction, and the mana offered, and you exchange that all for a little bit of damage against targets who are low, which you're going to kill them with Arcane Comment anyways in your one shot, so having Dark Harvest like isn't making or breaking things. Cheap Shot is going to be giving you more damage if you get like an auto attack off after you land the E, or it's just going to give you a little bit of true damage whenever you land the QE. Zombie Ward's going to give you a little bit of AP. You could also run Ghost Poro. It would do the same thing. It's going to give you about 30 AP once you fully stack it up, which that's okay. And then Ultimate Hunter, again, giving you more ults, but the cooldown reduction on this really isn't that crazy. You'd be getting about the exact same value out of Cosmic Insight. So that versus so much value from added poke, extra mana, extra abilities, more ability cast, extra damage. So that's that for Arcane Comment with for mid lane. I also think that Glacial Augment wouldn't be that bad on Lux, and I've like never seen it, like ever, not even once. With Glacial Augment, your first attack against an enemy champion slows them for 2 seconds, and the slow increases its strength over its duration. The slow is lesser for ranged champions, but the reason you'd be building or running this on Lux, you would also change your build entirely. You'd build GLP into Twin Shadows into either Death Cap. You could also go supportive items after that. You could go Athenes into Ardent after that. You would really open up your build options, but it would shift the first 2 items you'd be building in GLP and Twin Shadows, and then you would be wanting to run this into dive comps because you'd be providing a lot of utility for your team. With Lux, even if you get 40% CDR, her basic abilities in her Q and E are still on about like a 5-second cooldown, and that's pretty significant. With Glacial Augment, you add extra functionality in a team fight while those abilities are on cooldown. So you could spend your QE and then still have the GLP active, and then that slow is going to not only delay the enemy if they're trying to approach your team, but it's going to buy you a lot of time to get a second rotation of your abilities off. And then with Glacial Augment, you're also providing a lot of utility for your team, as that slow really, really hurts champions that have to dive onto you. Champions like Irelia, Aatrox, Lee Sin, etc. So with that, you end up in the inspiration tree, and then you have okay options in free boots or perfect timing. Again, if you're playing into assassin matchups mid lane, perfect timing can be good, but where you're also wanting to run this into dive comps, perfect timing is probably giving you better value. So when you can, run it, but when it's not necessary, free magical footwear is completely fine too. And then in the third row, you have good options in Futures Market or Minion Dematerializer. I think you should go with Dematerializer, as again, you can use it to use it on the caster minions 3 times. That's going to let your E one-shot the backline, and then that really helps you with wave clear. And killing the melee minions is a lot. You don't need to dematerialize them. With Futures Market, the benefit of it is to get a Lost Chapter faster than your lane opponent. But if you're running Glacial Augment, I don't think those are the matchups that you'd be playing into. And then for the 4th runes, I think you should go with Cosmic Insight. Even though Approach Velocity might be tempting, you don't need it. You're slowing the enemy to kite them, not to run into them. With Approach Velocity, you gain more movement speed whenever you slow them, and that's just not what you're looking to do with this rune setup. If they're slowed, you're going to land the skill shot anyways. You're going to get way more value out of Cosmic Insight. With Cosmic Insight, you get 5% cooldown reduction on your abilities, maximum cooldown reduction on your summoner spells, and on your items. So it's going to help you have the GLP and Twin Shadows up more often, and it's also going to help you have your abilities and summoner spells up more often, which you're probably running either Teleport Flash or like Exhaust Flash in this case. And then it might be tempting to go Cheap Shot Ingenious with this setup, as it's the most common, and it's not bad. You do have more ways to proc Cheap Shot with this, but I do think that with Lux and the way that she functions, you should be looking to run Presence of Mind, Coup de Grace, or Mana Flow and Transcendence with this, as you would still be having the same CDR breakpoint with the 10% from Transcendence with the GLP, Twin Shadows, and then Blue Buff. That would get you to 40. So depending on the matchup, I suppose if you're playing into champions that can be one shot, so champions that dive that can be one shot. So I suppose like in Akali, Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace would probably be giving you better value. But Presence of Mind is also still really useful on Lux, and then 8% more damage to champions who are lower health. So again, like if they can be one shot, maybe Aatrox as well. With Cheap Shot and Ingenious Hunter, you could run this. It'd be better into champions that you have to beat down too. So like tankier champions like Ornn, Irelia maybe, because you would be proccing Cheap Shot multiple times in a fight and on multiple targets, and then with Ingenious Hunter, you have 15% active item CDR, and then that builds up for every unique takedown. So with this, I think you should run this into like bruisers and whatnot, as you get multiple rotations of your abilities off, and then the true damage goes a lot further on champions like that. And then with Monoflow and Transcendence, maybe I'm off with this. Maybe this isn't so useful with Glacier Augment, but maybe this is just your greedier option. I'm not sure. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not sure. I suppose into let's say a matchup like Vladimir. This might be okay because Vladimir is still a champion that wants to dive, and the other runes, like I don't even know how to explain it, man. Like the mana offered and then the cooldown reduction, scaling, like both of these scaling runes kind of help you match Vladimir's scaling versus offering like extra utility from the secondary ones. That's a bit hard though. So I mean, for a default, I think you should just go with Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace with this. But again, into Bruisers, run Cheap Shot and then Ingenious Hunter. The shards wouldn't change either, so that's that for Lux mid lane. Jeez. And so with Lux support, I've recently learned Guardian doesn't work on her W like other supports does because it's not a targeted ability. So Guardian's kind of out of the table. With Aftershock, Aftershock was very dominant last season because it offered more stats, and then Lux was just a lot stronger of a laner. So both parts of what made Lux a strong support with Aftershock have been changed and just aren't as useful on her anymore. If you're playing Lux in the support role, I think you should be looking to run Airy, as even if you're getting extra poke on your Comet, it doesn't build up like it does mid lane. Like you're really just running a gimped version of mid lane Lux if you're playing her in the support role with Arcane Comment. So with Summon Airy, it's giving you the best of both worlds. Your attacks and abilities send Airy to a target that you damage, and then it also shields your allies whenever you shield them. So you're adding to your shield value, and then you're adding a little bit to your poke. Where Lux's abilities are on a really long cooldown too, even if you're just auto attacking the enemy champion in the bot lane, you're still proccing Summon Airy. You're not going to get the highest damage amounts with it, but come mid to late game, the shielding value that you offer, especially where you're primarily shielding one key target, because you're not going to give the Airy shield to everyone with Lux, even if you're hitting them with the W, then the extra shielding on that target does go a good amount of, like, you can proc it twice too, so with the shield going out and then the shield coming back in, and where you should be looking to put like 2 points in E and then max the W, I think this just has the most synergy with support Lux versus Arcane Comment, because again, you're really just functioning as like gimped mid lane Lux with that. For the secondary runes in the support role, I think you should go with Monoflow Ban, as having extra utility for yourself and Nullifying Orb loses like all of its value in the bot lane, and then building up the mana for free goes a lot further, where you can't really itemize flat mana for Lux support, where you want to be building things like Athene, Shirelias, etc. You get a lot of mana regen, but you don't get the flat mana, and that's what Monoflow offers you for doing what you already want to do in lane, which is poke the enemy. For the third rune, it's really weird. I suppose you would still go Transcendence. Its functionality would change to giving you more shields versus giving you more damage, but that's completely fine too. You wouldn't get value out of it for a long time, but again, missing out, even where you're support, man, you're not going to get it to level 10 for a long time with the XP changes coming into Season 10. So even with that, I think it's completely fine to run over Absolute Focus, because the ability power offered from this is so negligible and just not very useful. And once you get the 10% CDR, it's going to go a long way. And then it's very easy to build over 40% CDR with a supportive build. So that eventually converts into extra ability power. So you get extra scaling with this rune as well. And then for the 4th rune, it's still going to be Scorch. Just adding damage to your abilities makes you generally more useful in lane, as adding poke to it, your abilities gives you more value. And then for the secondary runes, if you're playing support, I think your only good options are Font of Life and Revitalize. If you're playing with a champion that can't make use out of Font of Life, so champions like Draven, well, even Draven can, champions like Syndra, Cassiopeia, etc. in the bot lane, if you're playing with them, you could run either Bone Plating or Conditioning second, but in most cases you should be looking to run Font of Life and Revitalize, as they're really your only options to like add to supportive utility for Lux. With Font of Life, you're going to be able to proc it with both your abilities, which is very, very good. And then with Font of Life, impairing the movement of an enemy champion marks him for 4 seconds. Ally champions who attack the marked enemy heal for 5 plus 1% of their max health. 1% of your max health over 2 seconds. So with that, you give them a pretty small heal, but it can be procced on all 4 of your allies, and then with that, the healing value really starts to go up. It's also going to benefit from all the Forbidden Idol items you run. It's also going to be able to proc Ardent Censer and Athenes. So you have multiple ways to do that outside of just shielding your ally. So that adds a lot of functionality, especially with Lux's like good itemization. With Revitalize, heals and shields you cast or receive are 5% stronger and increase to an additional 10% on targets below 40% health. So with that, you're just adding more healing and shielding power, which is a lot of what you're looking to do on Lux. And then for the adaptive runes, it's going to be Adaptive Force, and then Armor. Since you're playing into the bot lane, most of the time you're going to be running Armor. If you're playing into double AP, of course, run the Magic Resist, but that's really it for support Lux runes. Anything in the Inspiration tree would just not outweigh Font of Life Revitalize, as adding the extra functionality for Athenes and Ardent with Font of Life is so huge compared to anything you could get from Inspiration in either Biscuit's Free Boots or like Biscuit's Cosmic Insight. It doesn't even come close. So that's that for Lux support runes and mid lane runes. So thanks for watching. If this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. If you're interested in more rune videos, you can subscribe. I suppose you can check out my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/sorrynelson. Links in the description. Don't ask me to play Lux, man. Bye bye. See you later. Thanks for watching. Lux. She was so many players got rank 1 off playing Lux support with Aftershock. It was like some of the strongest shit ever, and like barely anyone like really abused it as really like as hard as they did. Like, you know, Don Arts in EU, he got signed because of that shit. That's insane. Don't tell him I said that, okay? Signing off. Lux player 69 signing off, man.